Okay, so I just came out of watching Spider-Man Brand New Day, and I would say yes, this is easily for me the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. And I don't need to have like it's that's not a thing of recency bias. That's a thing of I've recently watched the three Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, and I can say that this easily tops each and every single one of those. I would say before this movie, the number one spot for me was Spider-Man No Way Home. But that film, in a lot of its entirety, was carried by the fact that it's bringing back a lot of characters that we love, Spider-Mans that we've connected with, and obviously it took away a little bit of the spotlight, or a lot of the spotlight of Tom Holland Spider-Man, to focus on kind of nostalgia baiting people, not too much, but nostalgia baiting people into remembering these characters, remembering um, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man and the, or Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man and all these things. And so this film is about Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It's not trying to distract you with anything. Like Bruce Banner, for example, being in this film isn't really distracting, from Tom Holland's Spider-Man's development. Because when we're watching these films, what we care about is the main character's development and the main character's arc and how he connects with the world around him. These are the things that are important to us. Spider-Man No Way Home did a really good job of ensuring that Tom Holland's Spider-Man did still get character development. Like he absolutely still got character development, especially with Aunt May's death. But what this movie does is it really, really focuses more on that, and it doesn't kind of jingle bells, or what is it called? Jingle keys in front of you so that it can kind of distract you from the weaker elements of a story. It really just focuses on great storytelling. It really just focuses on creatively creating this film, and not just it being the same recycled MCU stuff that we've seen again, the same camera work, the same coloring, the same everything, the same action sequences. Like it really does feel like the most inspired MCU film I've seen across the entirety of the MCU's existence. It feels creative, it feels inspired, it feels like somebody's vision rather than just the product of a corporation. And so this film is amazing in that regard. I mean, it delivered on so much, and a lot of my high expectations for this film were because of let me try and pronounce his name correctly. Dustin Daniel Cretton. That's the person that directed this film, and he did an amazing job with Wonder Man. He even did a good job with Shang-Chi, but I wasn't a big fan of that film, but I was an absolute fan of Wonder Man because that film focuses on character work. It's not, sorry, not film. That show focuses on character work. It focuses on people. It isn't, something that's trying to have all of that stuff overshadowed by cool action sequences. It is a show about two people and focusing on those people's arcs and making sure that the narrative delivers on that, as that's what makes the artwork meaningful to me. And so Cretton did an absolutely amazing job of delivering on that with Wonder Man. And so hearing that he was going to be directing this is like, this is amazing. This is genuinely amazing. We might actually get a Spider-Man film that, could rival the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films like Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, and could even rival Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I wouldn't say this film is as good as those or reaches the emotional heights of those movies, but it definitely is great. I would consider Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse like the greatest superhero and the greatest Spider-Man films across all of history. Not that Spider-Man has a very large history of being on the big screen. There's only some interpretations of it, but it really does an amazing job. And it doesn't necessarily come close to it, but I would say it has the potential of not overshadowing, but being a welcome addition alongside Spider-Man 2 to being, one of the best Spider-Man films or one of the best pieces of Spider-Man media that we've had on the big screen and on the TV and all that stuff. And this film definitely has that potential. It does an amazing, amazing job with its character work. And again, I feel like because of how much Cretton focused on the character work and the story and the arcs, the character arcs inside of Wonder Man, I had confidence that that would translate into this film, and it absolutely does. I would say at the beginning of this film, I did feel discouraged with the direction it was going, mostly because at the beginning of this film, there were those like super, super slow-mo shots, right, that we see in the trailer. And it's like, I don't know what it's trying to do. Maybe it's trying to recreate like the feel of a comic book or something like that. But those slow-mo shots really turn me off. It's just like, because what are you trying to do with that? Like what does it deliver? If you want to take a creative direction, I have to understand, me as a viewer, I have to understand what purpose does that serve to the narrative, to the sequence. It doesn't really add anything for me. It felt like that was there at the beginning. And you can kind of tell, but like it felt like it was there at the beginning so that it could be something that's included in the trailer to look cool. But in the context of the film, it feels so out of place. It's like, what does this do with anything? Like, it didn't add a lot to the montage, and it kind of just broke up the momentum of the montage for me. So I wasn't a big fan of that. But the other creative decisions that they took in this did serve a narrative purpose, like the POV shots and the camera being inside of Spider-Man's mask. You may have seen that in the trailer. Like, the camera work in every other regard, in the cinematography in every other regard, really does deliver. It's just near the beginning of this film, they have those slow-mo, really still shots. And it just like, they never use it again. That's the thing. Like the POV shots, I love the POV shots. They use that multiple times throughout the entirety of the film. But those like smooth still shots that they do, that's just at the beginning of the film. And honestly, it does nothing for me, So like, I don't understand what the point of it being that creative was without necessarily having a narrative function to what was going on in the story. And it wasn't even like it just looked cool. Like I wouldn't even use that as a justification because it really didn't look cool. It just kind of looked awkward. And at some point there was like a still shot of him just, pointing his web shooters at the sky. And I'm like, I don't understand, what this is doing. So I would say like that discouraged me at the beginning. But as the film progresses, it really does get better and better and better and better. And it absolutely, delivers on the creative liberties that it does take and was allowed to take. Again, the camera work here is really, really, really well done. I mean, the way Spider-Man moves feels the best it's ever been, right? They do a lot of work with the camera. They do a lot of work with the cinematography to make you feel like Spider-Man is falling a really long distance, swinging a really long distance. There's this shot where he kind of gets stuck with pigeons, and I just love the way the camera moves in that because he's like messing around with his webs, his organic webs, because he's like changing as a person. He's changed, like his arachnid hormones or something like that are increasing, and it's just like so weird. No, it's not weird, but like it's just so interesting how we see him move. It's just so fun to watch, and it really, like, the way the camera moves really makes you feel like you're moving with Spider-Man. It really makes you feel like you're feeling the distance of how far he's moving, and just makes you more impressed with Spider-Man as opposed to it just feeling stale and repetitive. So the camera work and the way it bounces off of Spider-Man's movement, they really play well off of each other, and that's a definite strength of this film. But again, like for me, those slow-mo shots at the beginning of the film, I don't know, it definitely didn't belong there. Like I might have been open to them doing something with it, and later on in the film there is, like near the very end, like during the final battle sequence, there is a slow-mo shot that does belong. Like it looks cool and it adds to the battle, but in the beginning of the film it doesn't do much for me. Let me think here. The movie's villain is really good. I really enjoyed this film's villain. They do like the typical flashback stuff that they do in Marvel films to try and make you feel for that character, and that doesn't do a lot for me. But later on, as the conflict resolves, the way that they resolve the villain's story and how it perfectly connects with Peter and Spider-Man's story is really well done. Right? Now, there's kind of two villains to the story, the second of which is kind of like a twist villain, and you can kind of figure out who the twist villain is very early on, like it's painfully obvious. For me, at least, like it's like, oh, I see that this could easily be a villain's motivation, and what do you know? Later on in the film, that's, it's a villain, they're a villain. Like it turns out that, this thing is a villain. So you could see the twist villain coming. Does that take away a lot from the story for me? No, not really. It didn't take away much for me because it still was like, it's not a film that's trying to like be super mysterious. It's not like a crime thriller or something like that. So I didn't really care too much for it. It's just like, it definitely would have been better and would have been like a more interesting film if they could pull off the twist villain a little bit better. But the film doesn't really try to do that, so it's not a big deal for me. One of the decisions that they make in this film that absolutely delivers for me and really kind of speaks to Cretton's character work and kind of reflects off of what he did with the Wonder Man really well is that the first 2/3 of this film, or the first half, or whatever you want to say, like there is very little Peter Parker in it because the movie's premise is there's Peter Parker and there's Spider-Man, right? And essentially Peter Parker has given up being Peter Parker, right? He is now Spider-Man. He is only Spider-Man. That's his entire life. And the movie makes you feel like that. Like you spend a lot of time with Spider-Man and just Spider-Man in his suit to sell that effect. And it makes you feel the impact of that decision. I also very much love this movie's ending because what this movie does in its ending is what very few superhero and MCU films in general fail to do, which is that it doesn't go for the cliche ending. It doesn't go for an ending that, you could have predicted from a mile away. I mean, maybe you could have predicted the ending, but like there's one specific element of the ending that really works for me. And I'm not going to spoil it here, obviously, but just it really, really works for me. And it's that you don't like, they don't undo Peter's decisions. They don't undo the consequences of Peter's actions from previous films, especially in from the film of No Way Home. They don't undo that by the end of this film, right? And that's really amazing and refreshing to see. It's easy to like, they kind of undo it, like it kind of like starts the process of healing and starts the process of fixing the consequences of those decisions, but it doesn't like fully resolve it instantly, which is very refreshing to see because a lot of people would expect that this would just be like, oh, at the end of this film, X, Y, and Z happens, obviously, because that needs to happen. But no, it doesn't happen. And again, I don't want to be too specific, and you might already predict what I'm talking about, but it's beautiful that this film is comfortable with the consequences of Peter's choices extending past one or two films. That's an amazing thing to see, and that should continue. Now, of course, maybe in later installments, maybe in the next movie or in 2 movies from now, the consequences of those will slowly fade away and it will resolve the consequences of his actions in previous films. But for now, it's nice to see that they are sticking to the choices he's made and not trying to undo it. And that's one of my biggest criticisms of something like Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame is a film in its nature that seeks to undo the consequences of a very impactful film which is Avengers Infinity War. And for me, Avengers Infinity War is leagues above the quality of a film in comparison to Avengers Endgame, because Avengers Endgame, like all time travel films, is a film about sidestepping consequences, which is not something people can really take into the real life, as art is a reflection of life. And so when these time travel films seek to seek to create a story that undoes the consequences of a previous film, it really just detracts from the narrative's impact the narrative's meaning, because that is not something we can take into our real life. You know, when none of us here can go back in time, right? And you might think that means like, oh, then no story should ever have something that's fantastical or sci-fi because we can't actually do that in real life. That's not what I'm saying. The very nature of time travel in its essence is about undoing consequences, you know? That is what it's about. And sometimes time travel films handle that well by doing time travel and it creates more consequences. But that's not what Endgame's thing is. Endgame is about fully just undoing consequences, you know? Infinity War ended in this very, very impactful way. Now let's take Endgame, go back in time, and undo that. And they try and implement some sort of consequence, but they don't really do that good of a job. They don't do that good of a job with it, you know, in comparison to how impactful of an ending Infinity War felt like. So this film, going back to this movie, those choices aren't trying to be undermined so that it undermines the meaning of previous installments. It sticks with it. It feels comfortable sticking with something that is not perfectly resolved at its end. And I really appreciate that in an ending for a movie of this scale, especially as a fucking MCU movie. It feels like they're always trying to play things safe. And I'm really glad that they're sticking to Peter's choices and the consequences of his actions. So that's really refreshing to see. So I love the ending of this film. I love how everything wraps up. I also love the dialogue and the character work in this film, which again, if you've been listening to this review, you'll find that to be no surprise. There's a lot of moments of time in this film where it doesn't feel like it just needs to be action after action after action. This film is comfortable with just having 2 characters or 3 characters sit down and talk and the dialogue be meaningful, not just quips and jokes and this and that, like consistently one after the other after the other. You know, it is a film in which a lot of conversations take place and those conversations are meaningful and the dialogue is good and it holds up on its own, even without all the action there as kind of as a backdrop, right? Like if this film was just its dialogue, it would be a good movie. You know, I would enjoy watching it. And it does have fantastic moments between characters that really build on their characters, build on their experiences, and build on the consequences of the narrative. Two of my favorite scenes in this film is one that happens, I think, near the middle/end of the film, like somewhere in there, like somewhere in between there, that involves Peter Parker, Ned, and MJ in their, well, whatever, I'm not going to say any more than that, but it involves these 3 characters, and it's just genuinely a really fun scene to watch. It's very, very enjoyable. There's also a scene near the end of this film where there's 2 characters in the hospital. I'm not going to say, you know, who's in the hospital, but like there's 2 characters in the hospital, and the dialogue in that scene really made me feel something. You know, like it just felt strong, it felt powerful, it felt impactful, and it was just really meaningful to watch that scene play out and really meaningful to the characters, and you could feel that in the storytelling. So I also loved, you know, again, I love the dialogue in this film. I love the character work. It feels like some of the best across all of MCU's works. You know, it feels really, it has weight to it. You feel the weight. That's what I'm trying to say. I would say I did find some plot holes, or maybe they're not plot holes, just things that weren't explained. This is a minor nitpick for me. I don't really care about it. It's still a good film, and it doesn't really, you know, detract anything from me. The action sequences in this film are very enjoyable, and also to play off of that, what they do with Bruce Banner's character in this movie is very well executed. This is something that we've been wanting to be done with this character for a long time, and they absolutely deliver on that. So if you're a Hulk fan, you know, not only a Spider-Man fan, but if you're a Hulk fan, you're going to find something very, very interesting in this film, and it's going to be one of the best elements of it. So they do something very, very good in this movie with Bruce Banner's character. He feels very welcome, but he doesn't play this big role where it feels like he's detracting from Spider-Man's spotlight in the same way that, like, you know, Doctor Strange or even more so Tony Stark played in the previous films, where it feels like they need to share the spotlight with Peter Parker. this is a film about Peter Parker. This is a film about Spider-Man, and these characters are merely minor roles in it, although those roles do have a big impact, and they do deliver on what those roles mean to the story very well. I will end the review off here, and then I'll give my rating. Last thing for me is when the film ends and the credits roll, what they do with the credits, like the footage that they play during the credits. I'm not talking about the post-credit scene. That's a different thing. I'm talking about the footage that they use for the credits itself. It is like a really creative and interesting way of using the credits, and the way that they use that footage really shows that they understand what Spider-Man is and what Spider-Man is about and represents, right? So I love the footage that they use during the credits before it turns to black and the credits roll, as per typical. What they do with that is very interesting, and it shows that they understand what Spider-Man is about. So that's amazing, and it's just a very creative and inspired use, and it makes you feel the impact of the story a lot more. So that's everything I have to say about this film. Overall, I'd give this film an 8.5 out of 10. I was leaning more on 8 out of 10, but I'm just going to sit there with 8.5 out of 10. That might increase or decrease. If anything, it'll most likely decrease. But this is a very, very good Spider-Man film. And again, I feel like it has the potential to, stand up to something like Spider-Man 2, for example. But again, I have to rewatch that film. It does feel a lot more modern than that film, I will say, but I'd have to rewatch Spider-Man 2 to see how they hold up. It's not better than Into the Spider-Verse. It's not better than Across the Spider-Verse. It's very difficult to top those films because they have a lot of emotional weight to them, and they deliver on, just about everything anyone that loves Spider-Man and loves storytelling in general could want. But yeah, this genuinely is easily the best Tom Holland Spider-Man film. It's not a film about, jingling keys in front of you. It is a film about a character. It is a film about a person that is important to many, billions of people across the world. And they do extremely well with handling that character without distracting you with other shiny stuff, like cameos and whatnot. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10. I'm comfortable with that rating. Super happy. Both The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day absolutely delivered this month for me. So July has been a fantastic month for entertainment. And thank you guys for watching this review. Let me know if there's any other films you'd like me to review. It doesn't have to be a film that's releasing. It could be a film that's already released that you want me to watch. Maybe I've already watched it and I'm happy to share my thoughts on it. But thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.